I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock. And today, live in Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Whether you're listening live on February 1st, the day before the magnificent superb owl makes its annual flight across the United States. Zach's in there shaking his head. I love the superb owl. Everybody loves the superb owl. It's magnificent. February 1st, 1 p.m. Central on 101.1 FM, The Answer. Or if you're listening by online stream at 1011fmtheanswer.com. I'm just darn glad to have you. Oh, and by the way, if you're listening by podcast or on YouTube or on Krypton Radio or one of the ways that the show goes out after the live broadcast, I'm just darn glad to have you. Today, we're going to talk with somebody that I've been working with to have on the show for quite a while. I would say, and I'll let them introduce themselves more here in a moment, but they've probably had more impact on D&D compared to the amount of time they were officially involved with it than anybody else I know of. They were involved with so much cool stuff that is still part of the game, and is, from what I understand, they only worked there on one summer break in 1980, and by there I mean TSR, but maybe there's more to the story we'll get to here in a second. So we're going to be talking with historic D&D design. When I mean historic, I'm talking about he contributed to OD&D before the gray brown box D&D, or not gray, just brown box D&D, the original D&D. He contributed to that and other things. So he was there at the beginning, and a lot of his stuff that he contributed is still part of the game and widely known. It's Stephen R. Marsh. Stephen, welcome to Shane Plays.
Glad to be on. Glad
to have you here. Really looking forward to talking to you. I know we've been between your hiking, which we'll talk about a little bit, and the fact that you have a life. It's we've been trying to get you on for a while, and I'm just really happy that you're available for today. And also joining us is a friend of the show, been on several times, a original D&D and OSR RPG dude, Carl Heil. Hey, Carl, are you with us, buddy?
Yes, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And you're here via the magic of Skype all the way from Disneyland, right?
From Florida, yeah.
Florida.
We're not in Disney today, but we're going soon.
Well, I saw that the alligator saw his shadow, so there'll be 12 more months of Florida. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm. I saw you post that, yeah.
Yes, there'll be 12 more months of Florida.
Because we're in it.
Yeah. And what is it? What day does the big fat porker groundhog do his thing? What day is that? Is that tomorrow? You might know. It's coming up soon, isn't it?
No idea.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I always root for the groundhog. I don't care if he sees his shadow or not. I just love looking at that big fat thing. That's a fat and happy groundhog. Was it Punxsutawney Phil? Anybody know how to say it? Zach, do you know how to say it? Anybody want to take a guess at it? I don't know.
I haven't the slightest idea.
He's a big fat groundhog. I'll tell you that. All right. Anyway, so moving on. I want to introduce Stephen a little further. Stephen, from what I understand, doing my research, and I imagine Carl can fill in here too, because Carl, if people don't know, Carl is one of the one of the co-hosts for the Save or Die podcast, and he's also a co-host for the Crusader podcast for Castles and Crusades. Carl knows more about OSR and D&D history than far more than the average bear. But I'm going to take a run at introducing you, Stephen. If I get anything wrong, feel free to add to it or correct it. And Carl, do the same. So Stephen, you were able to contribute D&D lore and rules to the Blackmoor supplement published in 1975 for OD&D. And then you also had some stuff published in or contributed to Eldritch Wizardry. A lot of your monsters made it into the AD&D Monster Manual and have subsequently been in every edition of D&D since then. And then you also were a co-writer on the Expert rules along with David Zeb Cook. And then I know
David did all the hard work, actually.
What's that?
David had to edit. David did all the hard work. The hard work was editing it so it fit the same format as the mold-based set, so you could tear the pages out and swap them in and out.
Right.
And he did it without computers on a very short timeline.
Yeah, that's what amazes me, and I'll touch on it again, is the majority of your contribution, or at least the Expert rule set. I know you were kind of corresponding with Gary Gygax and sending him stuff, but your tenure, your official tenure at TSR was one summer in 1980. Is that correct?
Yes, I did Saga, wrote the Expert set, improved some Judges Guild stuff, and didn't improve some other, and had some feedback on some miniatures.
And in that time, between your contributions before then, which, Gary Gygax acknowledged you for in, multiple products, and then officially being with TSR and doing the Expert rule set, like I said, Carl, can you think of anybody else that had that much of an impact on the game and RPG history while being, quote unquote, that short of a time, like officially there?
No, not really. And especially not like officially there. There are probably, forgotten playtesters that, had a huge impact on the game while it was being formed that we just, don't necessarily know that information.
Well, the thing that strikes me here going through your biography, if you will, and I'm of course I'm referring to Wikipedia, I'm referring to interviews with you out there. It's kind of a synthesis of information, but it seems like a lot of your ideas were so good that they just stuck. So, and so you just had, a good imagination and things like that. And we'll definitely dig more into, what you've done with D&D and RPGs as the show progresses. But I also, first of all, did we miss anything there? I know that there was the Planes of Existence you were working on with Gary Gygax as a hardbound book, but that, about the time that it was going to come out is when, he was kind of forced out. So the book never made it, but there was, a lot of cool ideas in there. Is there anything else, that you feel that you contributed that I didn't mention?
A little bit of stuff in the strategic review, and I talked Gary into adding Good and Evil, the Law and Chaos. Yeah,
that was a big one. I just saw that. I can't believe I forgot to mention that. That's huge. I mean, do you know how many people refer, even in just general culture now, they'll refer to themselves as chaotic good, or, they'll describe something as chaotic evil or whatever. That's huge. So before the change, originally in D&D, you had law, chaos, and neutrality, and that was it. So you weren't lawful good, you were just lawful. And if you were good, you were, I guess, basically lawful. Then you had chaotic and neutral, and the same kind of thing applies. And then, so you talked with Gary and made the case that there should be another axis there, and he agreed. Is that correct?
Kind of. We wrote back and forth. Gary envisioned things. Have you ever read Paul Anderson's 3 Hearts and 3 Lions?
I have not.
Okay, on the one end you've got law, on the other end you've got what's basically feral. So chaos was feral nature.
Okay.
Wild. And law was organized. So that's where he was coming from. But it's not a bad model, but it's hard to get people to buy into it sometimes. Whereas if you have law and chaos, as in law as an ordered and chaotic as being almost anarchist, and then good and evil, it just makes it easier. I think it's a descriptive system.
Well, I think it's easier to understand. Like by the time I came along in the early 80s, it was the 9 alignment grid or axis or whatever you want to call it. And it instantly made sense to me because I was like, oh, good, evil, neutral, and then there's variations within. Whereas just the basic law, chaos, or neutrality, I'm like, well, can I be chaotic but also good? You know, I mean, giving those more options made it make more sense to me. Like, I still struggle now if I was like, well, if I just use those three vectors, or not those three vectors, but those three choices, you know, if a player asks me, well, you know, if I'm neutral, is that it? Just, you know, I mean, it adds a lot of nuance and possibility when you add that extra access to it. So
I'm glad you enjoy it.
I see a lot of people kind of now in the 9-point alignment system use them as like kind of and very, like lawful good is very good and chaotic good is kind of good. And I think they're kind of missing the concept a little bit there.
Yeah, they are. But
I have a question. Where in this process of adding the good evil axis does 5-point alignment that appeared in Holmes come into play? And was there discussions about 5-point alignment and 9-point alignment?
None that I had. I think Holmes just thought it would simplify things. He thought someone needed to go over the rules and write them better. And that was his effort.
So when you were going back and forth with Gary about alignment, you know, I've always been in favor of alignment. I think it's cool. I think it adds something to the game. And I don't even just see it as a morality spectrum. I think that if you live in a fantasy world that has deities and all this, that like it's actually one of the cosmic forces shaping the world you live in. So if you're chaotic good, it's not just like, well, I've decided to be chaotic good. There's like a deeper kind of cosmic thing going on. And if you act against your alignment, it can have repercussions, you know, especially if you're
Platonic ideals.
Yes. And if you're following a deity, the alignment can be very important. So I'm pro alignment. I think it's cool. Not everybody is. I know some people that play D&D and get rid of the alignment system. That's fine. You know, they can play it however they want at the table. But in the early days when you were talking with Gary, or when the discussions were happening, was anybody, you know, if anybody was championing, let's just get rid of alignment?
Not that I know of, but, you know, most of what I did was through correspondence.
Right.
And it was a fairly small group of people I was corresponding with.
I mean, back in the day, if you say you corresponded with people, you were literally just writing letters.
I wrote letters and got them back.
There was nothing like we have today where, you know, every way I've talked with Steven to get him on the show would never have happened back then because it didn't exist. So who were you writing letters with, and how did that all start?
74, I wrote Gary a letter. I read the rules, wrote him. And you got to remember, the world was smaller then. And so there wasn't that much correspondence going on. And then we just kept writing back and forth. I corresponded with Greg Stafford for a long time. You know, it just...
Now, Greg Stafford, that's Glorantha, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I know we lost him fairly recently. So,
you know, I just got called by some guys at Chaosing a while back to discuss hero questing and some stuff more. Yeah,
but so most of your correspondence before you actually showed up at TSR, you took a summer break.
I was in law school and I took the summer off. You know, I had the summer off, so I went to TSR, then I came back to law school.
Okay. So that one summer you were actually in Lake Geneva.
In Lake Geneva, yeah.
Okay. All right. And so then you were actually sitting in an office with David Zeb Cook, and getting did that feel like, wow, this is really cool, or did it just feel like kind of a job to do something for the summer?
It was pleasant. Both Zeb and Tom Mulvey were very pleasant people. So, you know, you show up to work and they give you stuff to do and you work on it. Or on occasion you get stuff and you go, what the fudge? Well, Timmy Schmidt. Of course, what I learned quickly is we could not approve stuff. That was perfectly fine. But somebody wanted a country of basically naked female Amazons who killed all males but were lawful good. And in order to have better armor class, of course, they just had lots of magic rings.
Okay, then. So
that's
how
fine.
far?
The whole world is becoming that for the rings.
My engineer Zach just said, "Wow, this was the Wild West of RPGs and D&D back in the day, baby. Yes.
And I did not approve it.
Yeah. So you kind of shut that
like,
one
you
down.
can't just murder people. You
Yeah.
can't murder people routinely and be, lawful good. Like what?
What I love, right? And this shows the difference in the times. Is that the objection wasn't to the naked Amazons running around. It was that they were killing people and being lawful good. So was that like a Judges Guild? Because you reviewed some of the Judges Guild submissions, and so was that yeah.
They sent us stuff from their subcontractors. I'm not sure who actually did that one. I didn't. Yeah, I mean, sure, you can make it Amazons. They just are going to have terrible armor class, and if you're going to have them murdering people, they're going to be evil.
You have blown my engineer's mind, Stephen. He is in there mind blown. So, we're going to come back to D&D and your history with RPGs. You mentioned Chaosium. You have a very cool connection with Sandy Peterson. We're going to come back to all that. But I also wanted to take a moment and give you time because I know one of your current passions in life is hiking. And a lot of times when we were trying to connect, you'd be like, I literally can't talk for like 5 days because I'm going to be on the Appalachian Trail. So
we did a lot of miles on the Appalachian Trail, and then we're going to be back out in March. And because when we're going back out, a whole bunch of miles we did don't count.
So is this, what do you mean by don't count? Is it, do you get to log your miles, but it has to meet a certain criteria or something?
If you want to complete what's called a through hike, you've got to get all 2,200 miles done inside 365 days.
Oh, okay.
So that miles you did outside of that don't count. We were not that far away, but we had to come off the trail last year for some family stuff, and that means everything we did early in the year, because we had a break over the summer, doesn't count.
And you blog about this. Where's your blog? I did read some of your stuff on your blog.
I moved it to adrr.com/D20.
Okay.
D is in dice, and then 20.
Okay.
adrr.com is my domain.
Okay. And the reason I wanted to bring up your hiking, because reading your blog and talking to you over the past several months, I mean, you don't just like if I go hiking, we have a place around here called Pinnacle Mountain, or we have some other hiking trails, or we've got mountains within a couple hours. I'm going to drive out there. I'm going to hike for a couple hours, and then I'm going to go home. But your hiking is like a whole different, I mean, it's like a major part of your life. So
it's only going to be like 15, 16 weeks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So you go out, you and a group of people will just go out and hike for that long.
Yeah. You've got between 50 and 90 people starting a day through March, and then it tapers off in April. There are people out there that start in January, and they'll start in February. It's less, the weather's terrible. And then they all start heading north. And then later in the season, after it kind of melts in the north, there are people in the north who start south. And the disadvantages in many of the times starting in the north is they have black flies up there. And you don't want to get there before the black flies are gone, which is one of the reasons you don't want to start too early. And, of course, if you're starting from the north, you don't want to start until the black flies are gone. And if you time it just right, you miss the mosquitoes as well. Last year, we flipped up and started south, and we got there right at just the right period and didn't have mosquitoes. It's like 2 mosquitoes in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Whereas people who were there a week earlier ran into some friends come out of the 100-mile wilderness, and they were just, they were swearing. Needing a life.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, they were. Yeah, I bet you they got some mosquitoes there that carry you away.
And weather shift and suddenly no mosquitoes is great. I thought it was wonderful.
So yeah, reading your blog, between the weather and other factors, I don't know. Is this considered a sport? I don't know how you would frame it. A hobby, a sport, a lifestyle. But it seems like timing is
just timing's important. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's recreation.
Yeah.
My wife likes to backpack, and so we do it together, and she's wonderful company. It's actually not that expensive.
Am I remembering correctly, Stephen, that you have other family members, like the pretty large group of you hike, or is it just you and your wife?
I and the wife. My youngest daughter is willing to hike if there are flush toilets and showers every day.
I
my
can
oldest
appreciate
daughter
that.
is going to hike, but she's got 2 kids. They're not really old enough.
Well, man, if you got 2 kids,
And
just make them carry the packs. Problem solved.
One's a baby who can barely crawl. The other's 4.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then my
problem
other
not
3
solved.
daughters are deceased, so they don't do much hiking at all.
All right, man. I'm sorry. Yeah.
But that was quite a while back.
Well, still.
That kind of put me out of the from about 93 on for a while. We buried 3 kids in 5 years, and it just kind of cut into my ability to be involved in the hobby.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that, man. That's unbelievably, unimaginably rough. All I could do is tell that, I don't feel your direct pain, but I empathize, man. I can't even imagine going through that.
Yeah. Anyway, so when people ask, where'd you disappear to? That's the answer.
Right. So there was a time when you were out of the public view.
Out of circulation.
Yeah. Well, I know.
was corresponding a little with some people, but not, I just wasn't.
Yeah.
I was involved in fanzines and other stuff.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, man. I am so sorry to hear that. But I am glad that, you're back in circulation now. I think I think it's your youngest daughter, because I've seen pictures of her with you on Facebook via the North Texas RPG Con.
Yes, both have been there one time or another. My oldest has won the chariot racing game.
Oh, did you? Now, who? Well, somebody was with you.
It's Maximus. She's kind of bloody, and then the younger one, who's shorter than I am, is the one who's often been with me.
Well, this past North Texas last June.
That was Rachel.
Okay, I was walking around, and she said, and there's a decent amount of people there. There's 400 or 500 people there, and there's other people in the hotel that aren't with the convention. And I was walking around, and she goes, "Hey, you've never been here before, have you?" And I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Welcome. I hope you're having," she was really nice, very welcoming. But she was able, she was able to tell out of all those people that I was a face that she didn't recognize. So she went out of her way to say hi and, "Are you having fun? And I hope you come back," and all that stuff. So made an impression on me. She was very sweet.
Yeah.
So last question on the hiking, because I know I would do this if I was out there in that environment and everything. Like, part of my mind would I'm on a hex crawl, and in my imagination, I'm like, okay, this is like the secret part of the Elven Wood. Or do you ever do that in your imagination, or are you just like when you're there, you're hiking and you're not thinking about D&D at all?
Parts of the train look like some games.
That's really neat.
And I got to thinking, fumbles. I mean, skill rolls you shouldn't be having to roll skills so often, because I'm doing stuff that requires attention and call skill roll in the game. But I'm thinking, if we had fumbles on the trail like this, nobody would finish.
Right, because you're going to fumble 5% of the time. So no matter what, one on a D20. Yeah, I love that. So you're applying. Yeah,
because, when the trail's bad, you're doing 15, 20 of these checks, difficult climbs or jumps, whatever. The day, it's like, wait a moment. By the end of the week, everybody's fumbled out.
Right, exactly. So there you go. You've deduced that a game system designed for a game may not necessarily apply accurately to real life. Now I'm going to steer us back in to gaming. Okay. I've got a couple of topics that I want to cover, but before I did that, Carl, do you have any questions you want to ask right now?
I would love to hear about. I'm sure a lot of people listening right now, are fans of Basic Expert. It's my personal favorite iteration of Dungeons and Dragons, and I know that you and Moldve and Cook worked on that. What was that process like, having 3 authors for that set?
Okay. Tom just wrote the basic set, and I got a bunch of stuff dumped on my desk and got told to start writing. And then my first question was, do I have to use all this stuff? And heaven forbid, you don't have to use all that stuff. It's just available to help. And then it was basically just execution. We're just, writing out the basic rules in a particular kind of format. The writing part wasn't that hard. The hard part was the editing. And quite frankly, I didn't think it was possible to get the editing done the way they wanted it in the time they wanted it. And so I've got it done anyway. That's inhuman.
What time frame? you were there for one summer.
And then Zeb had to get it edited and ready within like a month or so.
Okay, so after it was written, then he had a month to edit it, roughly.
I'm, ballparking it.
Right.
But it was, in terms of actual work time, he had available to work on that instead of other things. Whereas on my end, there's some stuff I did they didn't like. I wanted to have intelligent hairy rhinoceroses so they could engage in cavalry tactics and stuff. And people were like, nah. And Errol Otis drew a picture of a hairy rhino sitting in a overstuffed chair with a pipe, reading a book. He said, see?
So, well, he's intelligent. So wait a minute. So they shut down, out of all the weird things that have come down the years in D&D, they shut down hairy rhinos.
Intelligent hairy rhinos.
Do you think if they were maybe they were afraid that they would take over with their intelligence? Like if they had been stupid hairy rhinos, do you think that would have flown?
Well, they have stupid hairy rhinos.
They do.
They didn't like the intelligent ones. I thought, gee.
I didn't know there was a hairy rhino. Wait, so there's such a real thing in life as a hairy rhino?
Yeah, it's a megafauna from the Ice Age.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right.
And I just wanted them to be able to do cavalry techniques, I wanted them to be a more challenging
as a
encounter.
horse, right?
They were intelligent as a horse?
Yeah. I thought, gee, make them as intelligent as men. Think of the possibilities. One time we had some 20 hit die monsters that I'd done, and they decided to save those for the companion book, which never came out. So there were 20 hit die sea serpents at one point.
So that would have been the biggest creature in the book, because if people don't know, back in the BX days, B/X basic expert rules, like a lot of the stuff was in the same book. So you would have rules on how to play, and you would have monsters and spells and everything all in one book. So the big baddie would have been a 20 hit dice sea serpent.
Yeah.
And that got cut.
Spellcasting.
Okay, so the hairy rhinos, the intelligent hairy rhinos.
And the intelligent part got whacked off.
Which could have beat the main thing is that they would beat a woolly mammoth at a game of chess. That was the main difference. Keep that in mind, folks. And then so that got cut. The sea serpent got cut. What's something in expert that made it in there that would not be in there without, like, they handed you notes, they said write the book, but what's something that you added in that is distinctly wouldn't have been in there if you hadn't have put it in there?
Blasting spells for clerics, because they were short a cleric spell, and so it's like, gee, we have a spell that duplicates the staff of blasting.
So you went ahead and put that in there. So
yeah, because they need to have even spell charts.
And so when you say when they hand you a pile of notes, because for the people that don't know, the basic rules go level 1 to 3. And then the expert rules go like 4 to 14 or something. Carl would, I'm sure.
Something like that.
Yeah. So,
14 is the cap.
Yeah. So 4 to 14. So the expert rules were really where the meat of the game was, as far as, people, because you would get to level 3 fairly quickly. So, you just say, I like this game, I want to play more. And then the game really opened up about level 4 on. Like, I still am trying to understand, like, they hand you a pile of notes and say, write the expert book based on this.
Write the expert books, but here's some notes to help. Here's what I asked, is just to help if you want them. Okay.
But, I mean, you said this is what I think this is what I think the expert rules should be based on the basic book and the notes I've been given.
The basic book and the original Brown books. Yeah, it was just pretty straightforward execution. I didn't feel like I was working that hard. The hard work was the editing.
And the editing was a collaborative between you and Zeb Cook, or he did the majority of the editing?
Zeb got stuck with all of it. No, poor Zeb had to do all the editing. There was some discussion about some little pieces, like the hairy rhino.
The intelligent hairy rhino.
Hey, if Errol Otis hadn't done that illustration, I should have swiped the illustration, but I didn't. I did the illustration and popped it up on the wall.
Yeah, of the rhino sitting in an easy chair or a recliner.
Yeah, with a pipe.
With a pipe. And Errol Otis drew that. That would be fantastic to have. That's an Errol Otis original right there. So how long did it take you to write the draft, or what you considered, okay, I'm done?
part of the summer.
Okay.
Just sitting there typing. I don't remember the exact breakdown.
No.
And I did Saga. As part of doing Saga, I need to read a boatload of Nordic sagas.
And now I've got to admit, I'm not overly familiar with Saga. I mean, I've heard of role-playing games that say the Saga edition, but this is not what we're talking about here.
TSR did a bunch of board games, like the Invaded Pleasantville, Icebreaker, where you attack the Death Star. Saga,
Shane, I own it. Let's get together and play it sometime.
Let's do it. Yeah. So what's your take on Saga there, Carl?
It's a board war game, and it's based off of Viking mythology, and has some Errol Otis art you've probably never even seen if you've never heard of Saga. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I would love to get together and see that. So you, Stephen, what you were basically writing Saga, or what was your role there?
I wrote Saga.
Okay.
There were several ideas, and I said, do this one. So that's the one I did. What was really funny is the title I came up with got used in another game. In that game, there's absolutely no resemblance to my pitch. In fact, I'm pretty sure whoever came up with the title, because the title's easy enough to come up with, came up with it in the game without ever seeing mine. Because I looked at it and said, what the fudge? These guys, someone said, so they stole your idea. I said, obviously not. They couldn't have written this game if they had been exposed to my idea. They'd been exposed to my idea, they would have done something different.
So, yeah, you're saying it's just the title. There's nothing else that was similar. So you just... Two people.
And the fact there's nothing similar tells me they came up with the title on their own. It's not like it's impossible to come up with titles by yourself.
All right. Well, I'm gonna move us into some other areas. You've done a lot to contribute to RPGs that I still want to touch on. I want to get us to a break. Okay. We come back. We're going to talk about some more cool stuff. But I did want to ask, when you left TSR after that summer and went back to law school. Were you like, oh, I wish I could just stay here and make this my career? Or were you like, oh, this is kind of fun, but it's time to go back to school?
Well, the plan was I was supposed to return and go to work for TSR after law school. And then I got one of these letters from somebody, not Gary, saying, of course we never offered you a job, and if we had, we don't have a place for you. It's like, one of these. Yeah,
another what the fudge?
Yeah, somebody had an attorney help them write a letter. I was on extremely good terms with Gary, known to be loyal. And he was being forced out, and they weren't really that interested in having a designer around.
Right, and you being forced out also canned a book that you had been working on with Gary for several years.
Yeah, the idea was everybody that contributed a bunch of stuff would get paid by having TSR do a book of theirs. And so I never got paid for like Sogwin or Ixochitl, and Ixochitl is pronounced without the middle syllable, by the way.
Those are the sort of manta ray.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All those monsters I did, I never got paid for. A bunch of other stuff I never got paid for. The psionics I worked on, never got paid for. But the idea was I would get paid by they would do my book. And then they never did my book. And the module I was working on, Star Strands, disappeared when Gary's office when he got locked out of his office and everything, and it got burned.
Oh, man. Yeah, I heard about the great burning. What, Carl, you've heard about that, right? I'm sure you've heard about that
Yeah.
I always thought it was figurative, but it turned out it was literal.
No, they literally, I can't remember her name. Lorraine, what's the name of the lady that came in?
Anyway.
Yeah, she literally had stuff burnt. So that's so crazy. So in previous, like in the two supplements for OD&D that you contributed, not only a lot of monsters, but you basically kicked off what became psionics in D&D through the Mystic class in Eldritch Wizardry, I believe. So you never got paid for any of that, but I know that Gary went out of his way to put you in acknowledgments and thanks. You also got a thanks in the monster manual, but then the way that Gary was trying to get you paid was to do this hardback book so that the Planes of Existence so that you could get royalties.
Yeah, it's like when Jim Ward had his Gods, Demigods, and Heroes.
Uh-huh.
The royalties in that per month were very high. There was he got a substantial payment.
Okay, so Gary was trying to get you taken care of, but he got bushwhacked before he could. Okay, well, I've got to get us to a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about Sandy Peterson just a little bit.
He's a great guy.
You know, it looks like you tried to invent a role playing game before you ever even saw D&D, and if we get a chance, because I know psionics is beloved by many, I want to see what was your intention with that Mystic class? Were you trying to kick off a whole psionics thing.
I was trying to duplicate Indian mystics and the powers they were alleged to have.
But it becoming psionics, was that more of something that Gary picked up and ran with then?
That's something Tim Cass did. What Gary would do is he'd take everything, put it in a big pile, he'd hand it to Tim to work on, and then he'd tell Tim who went in the credits. And Tim never knew who had actually done what part of what.
But you were just
which
trying
is a rough way to edit.
You were just trying to create a cool character class, and it became the seed that became psionic.
I didn't. The offense and defensive skills, those were a different class. Those were supposed to be a class called divines, sonic divines. And they could never make those work, and so they mashed the two together and made them into skills.
I'm going to get us to a break. We come back, we're going to talk a little bit more. We'll have just a few minutes to have some more of this fascinating history with our guest, Stephen R. Marsh, who is a historic D&D designer. So glad to have him on. And, of course, we're also joined by Carl Heil, one of the co-hosts on the Save or Die podcast. When we come back on Shane Plays Geek Talk.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today. Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Cursova has you covered. Since 2016, Cursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally or at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue or find them on Amazon. C-I-R-S-O-V-A. Doesn't start with a K, it starts with a C. C-I-R-S-O-V-A, Cursova Magazine. Check them out today. I want to go ahead and throw out some love to Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at GameGoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or GameGoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And folks, if you do visit any of my sponsors, please tell them that you hear about them on the show. That helps them know that their advertising money and the relationship we've built is time and money well spent. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh yeah, I love that. All right, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. This is just weekly fun Geek Talk radio. I'm actually a pretty political guy, but this is not a political show. It's just for fun, and this is my escape from the real world. And come along with me on a journey into the things we love, and just have some fun. So, some quick show notes, and I'll get back to my guests here. We got just a few minutes left here to go over some more fascinating D&D history. But the show notes and links, if you're listening to the podcast or Krypton radio version of today's show, will be up at shaneplays.com. Last week's show is out there on the blog and the podcast, other places. That's episode 210, where we did our annual most anticipated geek movies of 2020 with Dave Ellswick, Arkansas talk radio legend Dave Ellswick, who's going to Mondays. Is that starting this week or this? I guess starting this Monday, Dave's going to be on 6 to 9.
Yep.
He's always been in the afternoon. He'll be 6 to 9 a.m. starting this week, right here on 101.1 FM, The Answer. The podcast version of the show after the broadcast on Saturdays does go out a few days later. And last but never least, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. I'm talking today with historic, I mean, it blows me away, his quote-unquote official intersection with TSR and the original D&D team was relatively short term, but his impact on the game is just strong. So many things that he contributed to the game, not the least of which writing the original expert D&D rule book. A very, very strong impact on the game over the years. Many of the monsters he's created, one of the things he designed basically became psionics, and just so many. He wrote Saga, so many things. But I don't want to. Where our time is getting short. We're also joined by Carl Heil, who is the co-host of the Saber Die podcast and the Crusader podcast, which the Crusader is the podcast for Castles and Crusades role-playing game. But anyway,
but you know, secret.
What's that?
Shattered Norns is going to see print.
Is it?
It's part of a module. Ben Marsh behind Pacesetter Games, because I couldn't make the con. He's going to run my BX scenario.
Yeah, I saw that last night on Facebook that you were saying, hey, I can't make it.
And he agreed to run a few copies off so people could pick, so they could have a limited edition just for the con. The money's going to go to the con.
And this is at North Texas RPG Con in June.
Yes.
So, which I definitely hope to be there, and I'd be shocked if Carl wasn't there.
There's a reason why
I'll be there.
There's a reason why my scenario for the con runs 60 pages, a single space. And that's because it's also the sandbox for Shattered Norns. That's the interdimensional space that Gary and I were working on that disappeared with his office. We created it. And so it's not being advertised or flagged that way, but if anybody was interested, that's going to actually be in the scenario. He's going to run a few copies off for people at the con.
That is super cool. I'm definitely going to look for that. I was just telling my wife last night I was hoping to get to North Texas again this year. So, Carl, you made time to come on your vacation and everything. I want to give you the opportunity to ask another question before we have to wrap.
Well, I think, and I know this is compacting a lot of stuff in a little bit of time, but we talked so much about D&D. Do you want to speak about some of your other RPG work? I
did some work with Chaosium, and I was involved in editing of RuneQuest 4 and playback when that crashed and burned because of some problems at Avalon Hill and the editor. I did a lot of work on HeroQuest with Greg Stafford. In fact, they've got a file of my stuff, and they just called me up to talk with me about some more a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's cool.
I like most of the people in the hobby. It was sad, Stafford died of all things of a heart attack while he was in the sweat lodge.
Oh, wow. I knew we had lost him, but I didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, and his health was getting better. He was on the mend and improving. And they just up and dies and catches everybody by surprise.
Well, I know that was a blow to a lot of people. That really rippled out in the RPG world when that happened.
Yeah. And you mentioned Sandy Peterson. He's a great guy. He was in grad school in Berkeley when I referred him. Before that, I got him hooked up with Greg Stafford. But he did typesetting for them. Yeah,
just because we're about to run out of time, and I want to make sure to get to this question. Speaking of RPG design, like Carl touched on, that's not D&D, and this will touch on Sandy Peterson too, now, I'm trying to clear up, were you trying to create an RPG called the Golden Bough before you ever even heard of D&D? Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, based on the Golden Bough. I was trying to do magic based on it.
Okay.
And quite frankly, it's a fool's errand.
Okay. But the point I'm trying to get to is you had the idea for RPG in your head and were trying to come up with a way of doing it before you ever encountered D&D.
Yeah, the problem was I'd never encountered miniatures, so I was trying to do this as a board game. And doing an RPG as a board game just doesn't work. And then the magic system, Spells as Artillery, was a great breakthrough Gary had.
Okay. Well, I gotta draw us down there, but I want to touch on Sandy Peterson. The way Sandy Peterson comes into this is you were in class, met Sandy Peterson, and he had the D&D books. And that's what...
I asked if I could borrow one. He was a complete stranger at the time.
All right, and then that built a relationship. Okay, I got 30 seconds here. I got to do this to you, Steven. I don't think anybody warned you. Carl already knows this is coming, but I don't think you knew it, Steven. It's the bad joke of the week. Bad joke of the week, Steven. Why do fish...
Oh, no.
Yeah, why do fish live in salt water?
I don't know.
Because pepper makes them sneeze. All right, I got to draw us down. Thank you so much.
Universal, the studio that brought you such classic motion pictures as All Quiet on the Western Front, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Out of Africa, is proud to present
Amazon Women on the Moon.
Featuring Steve Gutenberg, Rosanna Arquette, Lou Jacoby.
Where am I? Pretty scary, huh?
Ed Begley Jr., B.B. King.
Did you know that every 7 minutes a black person is born in this country without soul?
Tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree.
Russ Meyer, Ralph Bellamy, Monique Gabrielle.
I bet I know what you want.
Griffin Dunn, Steve Forrest, Sybil Danning.
Oh, Steve, save yourself.
Henry Silva, Steve Allen, Kelly Preston, Carrie Fisher, and Arsenio Hall. Amazon Women on the Moon.
I've seen enough, Doctor.
I know you have, but have you? Amazon Women on the Moon.
The new film from directors Joe Dante, Carl Gottlieb, Peter Horton, John Landis, and Robert Weiss.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.